Who's going to make this Minnesota Vikings team? Well, I have my latest 53-man roster projection, and there's some interesting tidbits. And what's also really interesting is where I have JJ McCarthy on my never-ending ranking of all 91 players. I'll reveal all that here on the newest episode of The Real Forno Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Real Forno Show, hosted by the one and only Tyler Forness. A to Z Sports sought him out to be their Minnesota Vikings reporter and NFL analyst. And he's a proud contributor over at SKOL North's Purple Daily. Tyler is also the captivating host of The Good, The Bad, and The Hungry on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network, and a founding member of Vikings First and SKOL.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of The Real Forno Show, sponsored by friends at Underdog Fantasy. My name is Tyler Forness. With me, as always, in the top left corner is producer Dave. And there is things starting to come out and things that we're going to be able to talk about, Dave. Let me tell you, I'm excited. The Vikings are going to have press conferences this week. Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell are going to talk tomorrow. Kevin O'Connell is also going to talk on Wednesday before the first practice. Let me tell you, I am excited. We're finally here, and the wait's over. JJ McCarthy is already in the building.
He is, along with a bunch of other rookies and a couple of veterans.
Yeah, it was really interesting because there were a couple players placed on the active PUP list, and to kind of clarify what that means, it just means they can kind of participate in activities but not practice. It just means they're hurt. They come in to training camp hurt when you get placed on that list. So one guy who was not placed on the list that reported was Christian Darrisaw. And Dave, you pointed that out to me that he had already reported, and it got me thinking, like, okay, they put Gavin Bartholomew and Chaz Chambliss on the PUP list, but they didn't put Darrisaw. So my thinking is twofold. One, he reported, but he might not have had his full physical yet, and they're waiting to do that when the veterans report, and he's just in there to continue to get treatment. Or
same
two,
with Will Fries.
Or two, he's 100% ready. I'm leaning toward the former right now because of, especially with how absolutely conservative the Vikings have been historically with injuries. But it is an interesting tidbit. It is something to park in the back of your brain and just remember it. Doesn't necessarily mean anything right now, but just remember it. And we'll get back there once we get a little bit closer to, training camp actually beginning, which is in 2 days. I would guess that we're going to get a laundry list of players on Wednesday morning, afternoon that are going to be on the list. And it's probably going to include the likes of Darrisaw, Will Fries, and anybody else who's just nursing like an injury. Like, maybe somebody like Jalen Nailor got a hamstring injury 2 weeks ago and he's still kind of coming back from it. That's just an example.
Moore, maybe?
Yeah, Rondale Moore. Like, we'll see. It means nothing if they're on the active PUP list other than they can't practice. Once they're ready to practice, they'll come off. It's honestly that simple. So I'm intrigued to kind of see what it all looks like, how things are going to develop, but that's a tidbit to file away. Before we get to the 53-man roster predictions, Dave, I've been going through over the course of the last week and a half of ranking all 91 players in the Minnesota Vikings. I just released the piece where JJ McCarthy was talked about. Where do you think I have JJ McCarthy on this list?
Of all 91 Vikings, you probably have
all 91.
25.
20. So you were giving me a little too much credit there. Yeah, I had him at 20, and I think it's a fair spot. For comparison, I had Dallas Turner at 23. I probably should have flip-flopped them in hindsight, but I do believe that with what we've seen from McCarthy and what we've kind of heard, that he might actually be farther along than where Turner is. And I'm a fan of Turner, and I'm not worried about how last season went. I actually think last season was just fine. But I don't have him super high right now because we just haven't seen anything. And I think in 6 weeks, he may prove to be like a top 10 Minnesota Viking, and that's without question. But I have this mental barrier, and I was talking about this with one of my bosses because we've been doing a ranking series at A to Z Sports where everybody lists like their top 20 at like we're doing the premium positions. And I said I didn't think 2 rookie tight ends should be included because they haven't done anything yet. And I just don't believe unless you are like a god tier prospect. Like Bijan Robinson was a couple years ago. I would have ranked him in like the top 20. I ranked one rookie this year, and that was Ashton Genty. I think I ranked him at 14th because he was a god tier prospect. I'm just like, if you haven't played, how can I say that you're already the best at a certain position, like 14th? Like, you haven't played it down. And I think that's kind of where I'm at with McCarthy. I just want to see him get on the field. And I've been pretty consistent with that opinion. And then once we get some more information, we can evolve our thought process. We can evolve what we're seeing. And I'm just staying on a patient wait and see approach.
Did you read Kevin Seifert's excellent article on what they did with JJ last year?
Oh, yeah. We kind of already knew some of that stuff with the VR and how he's going into different rooms and like asking questions, watching film with the defense and that kind of thing. I think all that's great, but like Kevin O'Connell's one of the smartest offensive mind in the sport, and he's stunk in the NFL. So they're obviously 2 different levels of player coming out, but that's one of the things for me. I'm just staying patient and waiting, and I have my projections, and my projections are I think he's going to be really good, but I don't want to speak too overconfident because I genuinely just have no idea. None of us do. So that's why I have him at 20. And I will say the long snapper Andrew DePaula ranked above JJ McCarthy. And I think once people see that, they might be like, what are you talking about? Like, well, 2 All-Pros, 3 Pro Bowls, and a second-team All-Pro. I'm sorry, that guy's just a good football player. I don't care about positional value at that point.
I got you. How you
long
did it.
Snappers are people too, Dave.
I get it. Oh, yeah, trust me. I agree there. But I get it how you did your ranking and how you're pessimistic on JJ McCarthy until
I'm
you
not
see something on an NFL field.
That's not pessimism, though. I'm not saying anything negative. I'm taking a wait and see approach. I think he'll be these things, but I'm not going to say he is these things until we see it. And I do think that in sports media, we need more of that. We need more leveled out analysis where it's all about what we think and not saying it as we know it for an undeniable fact. If he goes out and throws 4 touchdowns in week 1, I'll be singing a different tune because I have more data. And to me, that's the most important thing.
Oh, you know he's going to, because Ryan Poles mentioned that he was considering drafting him at number 1.
Well, let's back up a little bit. That line did not come directly from Poles, but it came from somebody who had the conversation with Poles. I believe it was either JJ McCarthy's high school coach in Illinois or somebody that he worked with his quarterback mechanics, like not his direct high school coach, but like somebody you'd hire on the outside, like all these guys, like Duke Manyweather, O-line masterminds. That's an outside coach. You know, those kind of people, NFL players hire those guys all the time. So I'll actually pull it up.
Hiring Rhino to get your stuff better in the offseason as a guard is one of those guys.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to pull it up because I do think it's an interesting line. Okay, so this is how the line, his name is Greg Holcomb. The line from Alec Lewis's piece in The Athletic. Still sipping a hot coffee at Starbucks, Holcomb recalls another moment from the offseason. He was hosting a quarterback camp for middle school-age boys, and one of the attendees was Chicago Bears general manager Ryan Poles. During a changeover at the camp, Holcomb approached Poles and introduced himself. They found their way to the subject of McCarthy. And Holcomb said he was talking about how much they, meaning the Bears, loved JJ, and said to me, I don't think people realize how close we were to possibly taking him. Obviously, then they love number 1 pick Caleb Williams, but Holcomb thought it was very interesting. It's wild because looking at things with hindsight, we can determine, okay, this guy was always the best prospect, or this guy wasn't a good prospect, and we just missed things. Hindsight's always 20/20. What I find interesting is the more we hear about McCarthy way after the fact in the draft, is the more people ended up liking him. And that was not the consensus. Obviously, you have Thor Nystrom, friend of the show. He's loved JJ McCarthy from the start, and he got a lot of people on the JJ train early and often because he was so gung-ho about what he could be in the NFL. He was not alone, and there were a lot of people who had the exact opposite opinion, who just were not impressed with him. And we're not talking people who looked at him and be like, oh, he just played for a run-first offense. No, like really smart people. Dane Brugler had him in the 30s. But he just came to the fact, like, look, it's a quarterback. He's got a lot of potential. Somebody's going to take him high. But it was far from this consensus opinion that he was a first-round pick, or let alone a top 10. I had him on my big board at 39. And I thought there was a lot of good, but I just had too many questions to feel comfortable ranking him higher. I didn't even think there was a lot of bad, just a lot of unknown because of the offense he played in and how limited some of his snaps were. Like, his final year at Michigan, he played in 7 fourth quarters. That's not a lot. That's wild how little he played in the fourth quarter. Yeah,
Harbaugh, I mean, was good at calling.
Absolutely. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, you would love for your quarterback to never have to play in the fourth quarter. But because you don't have a lot of those experiences at the college level, it's harder to use that as a projection to the pro level. So those were my questions. I wanted to see how things grew and evolved. And I continue to want to see that, which is why I was lower on him. And that's why when I hear something like this, it's so fascinating to me that going into the draft, we were in such a different headspace when it came to JJ McCarthy than we are now. And that lack of consensus is very interesting. And now we're hearing more and more about how people loved him and this, that, and the other thing. Well, they're more comfortable saying those things now because you're getting a lot of positive reports out of TCO Performance Center. And when you get those kind of positive reports, that's objectively a good thing, And like, if you hear something, like, I remember being like a kid, like, you hear something, oh yeah, I heard that too, or oh yeah, that show was great, but maybe you just weren't comfortable saying it because you didn't know what your friends would think. And it's kind of the same concept where if you go all out in one, like with one thing, too afraid to be wrong. And I've gone out and pounded the table for guys, and I've been wrong about. Malik Willis has not turned out the way I thought he would. He also
Anthony
didn't have
Richardson is another one.
I'm holding out on Richardson. He's going into year 3, and he's doing a lot of the same things that Josh Allen did going into his big breakout year. So I'm still holding out hope because Allen and Richardson are very, very similar in theory and how they were as prospects. But that doesn't mean Richardson will be Allen. But he's trying to sync up the hips with the arm and do a lot of those things, and that can really impact accuracy because he's got a freaking hose. That dude is Uncle Rico and throw the ball a country mile over the mountains. Mm-hmm. So we'll kind of see. But I'm okay pounding the table for guys, but you got to eat it when you're wrong. You got to be comfortable with that.
And I think that's that. So, yeah. Cause and Effect has a question for you. Forno, do you think a B or C plus version of JJ is enough to get the Vikings to the playoffs and even past the first round? Or is that asking too much? And should we wait until week 5 to evaluate him?
I think we should be waiting until we have a decent sample size. I think the bye week is a really good time to kind of kick back and look, hey, this is where we're at. And you have a long enough sample size of different types of environments. He'll have played 1 road game, 2 home games, and 2 neutral site games. So you'll get him in a lot of different environments. You get him in a lot of different situations. And then I think we can have a good sense of where he is right now and how he's trending. I will say that if you get a C plus version of JJ McCarthy, this team can still win 10, 12 games. was like C plus is slightly above average. If you believe that C is straight average, which is kind of how the grading scale we were raised on, like you can still do really well with that, considering everything you have around you. So, could they win a playoff game?
Player?
They could win a playoff game if he's a C plus guy. I would kind of take a look at it in when you look at some of these quarterbacks who were first year starters who are now like really, really good, their first playoff appearances. Justin Herbert wasn't very good. Lamar Jackson stunk. He was bad in that first playoff game against the Chargers. And they were at home, but he didn't play well at all. So you look at some of those things like, okay, it's not a big deal. Plus, the playoffs are just different. The energy is different. The determination is different. I'm trying to think of the word, like your own, I can't think of the word, but like your own hype level, your stress about the game and how you have to win. The urgency, there it is. Your urgency is just different. It's going to be, and some guys can handle it really quick right away. Some guys need that experience to be able to kind of learn from it. So we'll kind of see. But yeah, if you get a C plus version of McCarthy, you can win 10 games easy because of, I mean, just look at the roster. It's bonkers. It's really good. So I'm not super concerned from that aspect.
Speaking of the roster, you've projected the final 53.
I have.
So I think,
but you
this
know
is the version 3.
You know what else I've projected, Dave?
What?
I projected Bo Levi Mitchell to go under 322 passing yards a week and a half ago, and on Underdog Fantasy. And I've been having a lot of fun with the CFL plays. Bo Levi Mitchell and the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Remember, Bo Levi Mitchell, former Minnesota Viking, and that Hamilton offense is just lighting the world on fire right now. They just beat Ottawa for the second consecutive week, 30-15. And Bo Levi Mitchell, he went above his 307-yard prop the week after going significantly below his 322.5-yard line. So it's something to keep an eye on. And Underdog has a lot of fun, different options for you. If you don't like the CFL, baseball every single day, the WNBA is just coming off of their All-Star break. The British Open just happened, and you can find PGA events all the time to be able to have a little fun. And the best part is if you use the promo code FORNO, FORNO, you can get up to $1,000 in bonus credits. You just have to be in one of the states you see on the screen. And don't forget, it's all about fun. It's a good time. Call 1-800-GAMBLER if you feel yourself having just a little too much. All right. Let's do the 53-man roster, Dave. There is some...
And again, I did not generate a graphic for this. We'll do it when we go to the final 53.
Mm-hmm.
When it's Tyler Forness against Dave and Darren.
Just so you can put it in your brain, I'll have the final 53 pretty much right after the game. Because they wanted to come out ASAP. And I'll have it pretty much framed before the game starts, but then you might make some tweaks based on this, that, or the other thing. So, all right, quarterback. Still going to have 3 guys. J.J. McCarthy, Sam Howell, Max Brosmer. I think they might like Brosmer. And this isn't like a Jaren Hall situation. Let me kind of explain that. They drafted Hall, but they didn't have like a pre-existing relationship with him. They've had a relationship with the University of Minnesota for a while, and Max Brosmer, the first time Kevin O'Connell met him was when he threw at Minnesota's Pro Day last year, the 2024 NFL Draft. So there's already been a semblance of, hey, I know this guy. I know what he's about. So I think that's a really interesting element here as well. And Brett Rypien is, you can just sneak him onto the practice squad. And I think they might prefer to do that and develop a guy like Brosmer. Plus, from all reports, he's got the brain for it. And that's a big thing. You notice O'Connell's bringing in a lot of guys who just don't quite have everything for those third quarterback spots, but they have the brain. And I do think that that's an interesting element here. So This hasn't changed, but I do really like where this quarterback room is at. I would like to have a little bit of an older voice in the room, but you have a 17-year vet in Josh McCown as your quarterback's coach, and your head coach is a former NFL quarterback. So I'm not as concerned about it as I would be if this was another organization. Running back, Dave, 4 running backs. That's including CJ Ham, the fullback. So it'd be Ham, Aaron Jones, Jordan Mason, and Ty Chandler. And I think the interesting part about this position group is Ty Chandler. Look, I had hope for him. I really liked the idea of Ty Chandler. He just did not perform well enough when it came to zone runs, and his vision and decision making was poor. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. It was poor. And because of that, you're looking at him just not being somebody that you want to keep around long term. But here's the thing.
Causing us to trade for Cam Akers once again?
I don't think so, because you have Jordan Mason. But the big thing with Ty Chandler, he's a great special teamer. That's what you need to be as your third running back. So in order for Trey Stewart or Xavier Scott to make the roster, Dave, straight up, they need to be good on special teams. No question about it. If you want to make the team, special teams is going to be where you do it. And you got to beat out Ty Chandler. And I think that's going to be a really important factor here. Can they beat out Ty Chandler? I will find out. We will find out. Because let's be real, I think Trey Stewart will probably blow him away when it comes to the running game. But if he can't play special teams, that's where the value is with this spot. You sneak Trey Stewart on the practice squad, develop him there, hope he can become a special teamer, or maybe he becomes the running back too over when they eventually move on from Aaron Jones. We'll find out how that's going to end up looking. Wide receiver, I have 6 guys still. For context, I still have Rondale Moore on the PUP list going into the year. All I know is that injury he suffered in training camp last year with the torn ACL and more damage was really bad. That's how it was described, as really bad. So until he practices, I'm considering him on the PUP list going into the year. We'll see what that ends up looking like, but that's how I'm going to have him classified. And then, you know what? If they clear him and he's on the roster, then by all means, he will make the roster as a wide receiver. But for now, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Jalen Nailor, Ty Felton, Tim Jones, and Jeshaun Jones. Now, the first 4 are pretty simple. Jefferson, Addison, Nailor, Felton. I believe the rule is with Addison, he has to be on the roster for the final cuts, and then he gets placed on the suspended list about 24 hours later. That's what happened with TJ Hockenson. They had to have him on the roster, but then they could put him on injured reserve 24 hours later, and then that's what allowed him to return. So it gets a little nuanced with some of that stuff, but that'll at least give you some context of what's kind of going on here. So Addison will be on that roster. I do think if they choose to bring in a 6 wide receiver, if it's not more once Addison reverts to the suspend list, I do think Lucky Jackson is probably the guy of this group. And I had Jeshaun Jones taking over for Lucky Jackson in that spot. I think Lucky Jackson's the new Tristan Jackson, where he's just that fringe roster guy that people just like and they think is good, and then he just never makes the team. Jackson was elevated a few times and did get signed to the active roster at the end of 2023, but did not make the roster last year. I think he's that guy now. But Jeshaun Jones, they gave a bunch of money to last year as a UDFA. They gave him the same amount of money as Gabe Murphy, so they really liked him. He's got ability to play inside and outside. I think he had punt return experience from his time at Maryland. And he's far enough removed from his back-to-back torn ACL seasons in 2020 and 2021 where that shouldn't, whatever factor that is just there, and any excess factor is gone. And he's been getting good reports out of camp. So we'll kind of see. I'm going to keep an open mind. I'm going to kind of see how these guys look, because I'll be real. Thayer Thomas is now going into his third year with the Vikings. Maybe he's that third guy. Maybe he's that sixth wide receiver. I think if Tim Jones doesn't make the roster, it'll be a surprise. He did get $500,000 fully guaranteed, but he's the new Trent Sherfield. I'm here to be a depth wide receiver, but a special teams ace. And if he's going to get beaten out in that role, then hey, maybe that guy just deserves it more. But I expect Tim Jones to be here. I ranked him, I think, 42nd or 43rd on my player rankings. He's a good football player, but he's never going to be like this elite difference maker. Think of like old school Chris Walsh. That's what you're signing him to be. I remember as a kid, I always thought, oh, they should get Chris Walsh in more on receiving downs. Well, there's a reason why he wasn't. But yeah.
But he's a great special teamer.
And that's why you have him. Your depth receivers need to do that kind of stuff. You have to play special teams. And that's where it gets tough. Like if Rondale Moore is just kind of in training camp, but he doesn't play special teams. Yeah, if he's the punt returner, then that's a different story. But I'm guessing he won't be the punt returner. What do you do? Like, do you keep him as your fifth wide receiver and he doesn't play special teams? These are the questions that you ask when you're building out a roster. Yeah, Odie doesn't like that take. He farted. Ooh, boy. Let me tell you, it's stinky. But that is wide receiver. Move on to...
You think they'll keep 6 and not 5? Which you do.
Yes. They've kept 6 the majority of the time. And the one year they didn't, they started with 4 and they ended up with 6 anyways. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I actually just realized, oh, no, there it is. I just scrolled way too fast. I'm like, wait, where's my tight ends? I'm like, I remember writing it. My computer errored out on me, I guess, and I didn't even see it. All right, tight end. I still have it as TJ Hockenson, Josh Oliver, and Gavin Bartholomew. Bartholomew missed time during mandatory minicamp with an injury, and he got placed on the PUP list this afternoon. Well, is he going to be any good? Is he going to just not be healthy? I think these are very fair questions, but he was the draft pick. And because he was the draft pick, he's going to have a advantage over Ben Yurosek and Bryson Nesbitt. Giovanni Ricci, he's just a camp body. My thinking is they signed him because Bartholomew had this injury, and that was it. I like Ben Yurosek. I think that he could end up being that third tight end. I wrote a piece yesterday on Sunday talking about how maybe, depending on what his free agent market is, signing Noah Fant, the recently released tight end from the Seattle Seahawks, would be a good idea. But a couple things have to work out. It has to be the right money, and he's got to be good with the role, which is, dude, you're the third tight end. You're going to play 10 to 20 snaps a game, and we just want you to go do vertical things, do pass catching tight end kind of stuff. Remember, TJ Hockenson and Noah Fant were one of the best tight end duos of recent memory in college football. And there was a real debate during that 2019 NFL draft of who would be better, because Hockenson was more well-rounded, but Fant was a much better pass catcher and a weapon in that sense. So putting them back together could be interesting. Fant has just not emerged as that elite pass catcher like we all thought he might, especially after those first 3 years in Denver, where he never had a season under 530 yards. He just never was able to replicate that production in Seattle for whatever reason. And if he doesn't have a lot of suitors worth like big money, coming here and being the tight end 3 might be a great option for him. And it gives the Vikings an extra element. Because remember, Johnny Munt played like 10 to 20 snaps a game regularly. So you could bring in Noah Fant and he could play that role, and it would give you an extra option. You're not bringing him in because you need him to produce, but he probably will produce, and that's a net benefit for you. So This tight end group is going to be interesting to see how it shakes out. I'm very intrigued by it.
Actually, I'd like the idea of Noah Fant because he's already been developed versus one of the young rookies. Because I've always said you draft a tight end for their next team. Takes that long for them to figure it.
There are cases where they figure it out. Brock Bowers has already figured it out.
There's
so many cases. There's so many cases of a guy like Brock Bowers. We thought OJ Howard was going to be like Brock Bowers, not in the same stylistic sense, but in the same impact sense. He stunk. Never figured it out. So we'll see how all of that kind of works and what this position group looks like. But there are some interesting pieces here. On to offensive tackle, 4 here. And I think the back end of the offensive line is where we're going to see our most intrigue on the offensive side of the football. Christian Darrisaw, Brian O'Neill, Justin Skule, and Walter Rouse. A couple of things. There is a chance Darrisaw is not on the opening day roster, and he's either on the PUP list or the injured reserve list, where he would miss 4 games minimum. There is, and because of that, then I think a guy like Logan Brown probably makes the team. I like Logan Brown. His teammates at Wisconsin didn't because he got kicked out for allegedly beating up a teammate in practice. And when he's announced that he was entering the transfer portal, his interim coach, Jim Leonard, who I believe is now with the Broncos, straight up said, "You're not entering the transfer portal. We kicked you off the team." And I think that there's a tweet out there with that, like pretty much that verbiage. So that's why he went undrafted, but he's a good player. He's 143rd on the consensus board. And I think a guy like that makes a lot of sense to keep around. We'll see how some of this stuff ends up manifesting, how this group looks. And if Walter Rouse they're going to kick him inside, because his biggest flaw at Stanford and Oklahoma was he struggled against speed. Kind of like Blake Brandel. Blake Brandel struggled in those areas. And I do think moving him inside would mitigate some of that. So we'll see. We'll see. This offensive line group is interesting in that sense. And we'll move on to the interior guys, because who's going to play backup center? That's a big question mark. Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, Donovan Jackson, your starters. Blake Brandel is your most valuable offensive lineman that's not a starter. And then Michael Juergens is who I have right now at center. Zeke Correll is another undersized North Carolina State center. We've all seen that before. And then you have Vershawn Lee, who he was okay at South Carolina, but was never really an elite kind of guy. So how is that going to end up kind of playing out? I think that's going to be a really interesting battle. But Joe Hubert, I think, is a really good guard. But can he play center? I have no clue. I don't know if he's ever played center at the college level before, but he's played on both sides of the line. Henry Bird just kind of seems to float around. So we'll kind of see what he ends up looking like. But yeah, this interior offensive line, like Michael Juergens kind of stunk last year during preseason and training camp. So will they want to bring him back as the backup center? I have my doubts.
Again, he was a draft pick.
Oh, yeah. He absolutely was a draft pick. And I do find that part really interesting as I adjust my microphone here. We'll see. Draft picks are going to have advantages over undrafted guys. That's just a fact of life. So what kind of advantage will it be? We'll find out in time.
You came up with 25 on the offense players. Now, are there any positions that you would fudge, like 4 tight ends, 5 wide receivers, stuff like that, where you'd move people around?
Depends on how people perform. I consider having a 5th running back if Trey Stewart or Xavier Scott is just that good, and then you take away a wide receiver. I think tight end's probably the more likely spot where, hey, these guys are just too good. We're gonna run 4 tight ends, 5 wide receivers, and we'll just be fine. I think a lot of that just has to do with how guys perform. Because remember, like it was 2 years ago, They only kept 4 wide receivers in the initial 53, and we're like, what are they doing? Well, they have plans. They're going to maneuver with some guys. So that initial 53 does not always translate to, hey, this is what's going to be on that opening day roster. So we'll kind of see.
And a second question, did you take salary cap into consideration?
Considering the Vikings are... Well,
They got plenty of
let's
cap
start here.
this year, but for next.
I mean, it's always like a consideration, but I didn't straight cut or keep a guy because of salary cap.
Okay.
I don't think
the Vikings, though, go. What is the level that you'd say take Blake Brandel because of his, if he gets cut, it saves $3.5 million versus taking one of the other O-linemen that's working for vet minimum or on a rookie contract instead? How much does that rookie have to be better or equal to Blake Brandel for them to cut Blake Brandel, for an example?
I don't think they'll cut Blake Brandel, but I do like the idea that you've presented, where at what point do you look at salary and be like, okay, this guy's just way cheaper and he's X amount as good as this guy. So what do we do? And I think it becomes a more difficult proposition because, look, I was higher on Brandel than a lot of people last year. And one of the ways I was higher on him was when he was next to Darius, he was great. He was just absolutely fantastic. So the way I see it is I don't think it'll be that kind of issue. I don't think we have a lot of those different position battles on this roster, where in past years we probably did. Like, I think if someone like Ed Ingram was still on the team, with a lot of people being so low on Ingram, and he was set to make about $3.6 million on the cap, 3.3 saved if he was cut, that I think would have been more of a conversation than where we're at with Brandel. Especially because Brandel has the flexibility to play tackle, and he's played tackle at a decent level in the NFL. He's played guard at a decent and a high level in the NFL. So those are interesting questions. I think one guy who I don't think will get cut pretty much no matter what is Jeff Okudah, because his $2.35 million contract's fully guaranteed. About half it signing bonus, half it base salary. So they could trade him and save the base salary, but they believe he's going to be on the team and he's going to be a contributor of some kind. So those back end of the roster guys are going to be more likely to make it because, look, $2.35 million isn't a lot of money. It ain't nothing. That's about 8% of the salary cap. No, sorry.
No.
0.8% of the salary cap.
Yeah, but I'd take it any day of the week if somebody wants to give it to me.
No, what I mean is I don't think that they'll cut him because then they'll just have to spend another, at minimum, $840,000 to. So it'll be a $3.1 million charge essentially to get rid of him. I don't see that happening. That's a guy that will stay because of the salary cap.
No, what I'm saying is somebody wants to give me $2.8 million, I'll take it.
I know. I think we would all take it.
Hey,
that would be great.
You do that, we set up a full-blown studio.
Yeah.
And I'll come up to Minnesota to broadcast.
There we go. All right. We'll create a little Odie room so he can come to the studio. Defensive line, I have 6. Defensive line is going to be another one that's really interesting. Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Harrison Phillips, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, and I have Levi Drake Rodriguez and Jalen Redmond. I think Taki Taimani could make this really interesting. He did make the team because he was great last year. Elijah Williams is my sleeper out of this group. It's really interesting, the Vikings in the 5th round and later, that they're signing and prioritizing guys who have a good profile, but their weight is small. Tyler Batty, 270-pound, albeit an edge, but he's more of a 5-tech 4-eye kind of guy.
Tweener.
Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, 275-pound tweener. Elijah Williams, 273 pounds. I'm just really intrigued that they're looking at these guys and being like, okay, You weigh less. So what's the idea? Why are they making these guys a target? And I'm just very interested to see what the path and what the vision is. So we'll kind of see. But those last two spots, because I think Ingram Dawkins would have to be absolutely atrocious or like run over a cat or something to get cut from this team. Even though he's a 5th round pick, I don't think he's getting cut from the team. I think he's pretty safe. So it's Levi Drake Rodriguez, Jalen Redmond, Taki Taimani for 1 or 2 spots. I think it'll be 2 because they've kept 6 defensive linemen pretty regularly. And with kind of how things are trending and now the defensive line is in a good spot, they will use edge rushers less. So I'm keeping 1 less edge rusher. I'm seeing in the chat that he was 295. Does he now? Because at his relative athletic score, like his combine testing, he was like 273. So if he's up to 295, then it's a whole new ball game. And I'm also going to ask a lot of questions because I'm like, okay, how good is that weight? But I want to see him on the field. He's just the guy I'm really intrigued by the idea of, especially being so productive. But it's the FCS production. Could mean absolutely nothing because it's the FCS. I'm interested. I want to see. But Rodriguez, Redmond, and Taimani are going to be really interesting. I think Rodriguez is going to end up being that backup nose tackle, which is why I have him over Taimani. And I said last year, I think they're bulking him up to be a nose. And he'll still be able to give you a little bit of pass rush juice. And I got a little pushback on it. I think that's what they did. And he showed out last preseason. Not as much as Redmond and Taimani. Jalen Redmond was my 27th ranked Viking. I loved Redmond. So we'll see. But this is a really good position group. And then at the top, you have guys in Hargrave and Allen who can rush the passer, and Harrison Phillips, who you're not going to ask to rush the passer anymore, which is a better use of him. Edge rusher down to 5. 4 technically if you don't want to include one of them as an edge rusher, which I'll explain. Jonathan Grenard, Andrew Van Ginkel, Dallas Turner, Tyler Batty, and Bo Richter. No Gabe Murphy. Gabe Murphy did ball out last year, but the profile that Batty has and how he's long, he's tall, he's incredibly strong. I can see Batty being the kind of guy where you take someone like Van Ginkel or Grenard off the field on some 1st and 2nd downs, and you put in Batty, and you ask him to set an edge, and you ask him to play good run defense. And that's the kind of guy that can do that for you. And Bo Richter, you could put in at off-ball linebacker too, because he's a tweener. At Air Force, he played both. He's barely played defensive snaps in the NFL, but he can do both. Kind of like Van Ginkel in that sense. So if you want to put him at off-ball, that's fine. Murphy is going to have the edge right away, but I do like Batty a lot. And I do believe that the profile Batty has is just better than Murphy. Murphy's got those T-Rex arms. Richter does too, but he's more of a special teams guy. That's why you're keeping him. This could be your new Heath Farwell. So because he's your special teams guy, I don't really care. I don't really care that you have those super short arms if you're a special teamer.
And you do great on special teams, like Richter has done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's been awesome on special teams. You have to keep some of those guys around. And you know what? If he's got 30 and 1/2 inch arms as a special teamer, I'm fine with that. Murphy's not a special teamer in that sense. He's not that kind of athlete. So that's kind of where I'm looking. If Murphy makes it over Batty, I won't be surprised. At this point, I think Batty will end up with the spot over Murphy, considering some of the trends that we've seen, considering some of the profile issues that you have with Murphy. But we'll see. I could just
Brian
be wrong.
Porch brings up, could they move Murphy to inside linebacker?
I don't think so. I don't think he's got that kind of profile. They do stand him up a little bit, but he's not the kind of guy you stand up and drop. He's the kind of guy you stand up and use as a pass rusher. So I don't think he's a linebacker. I understand the idea and the thought process, but no, he's not an off-ball kind of guy.
I think of inside linebacker as somebody that's plugging a hole to kill running back coming through it.
Mm-hmm. I
Does
don't
he
disagree.
have that sort of mentality?
No, not really.
It takes that sort of special individual to do that and enjoy it.
Not really. I don't think he's that kind of guy. But we'll move on to linebacker because there is a guy on here that is that type of guy. Blake Cashman, Ivan Pace Jr., Eric Wilson, and Kobe King. Kobe King is that kind of guy. He wants to get in the hole and he wants to beat your ass up. He wants to thump. And that's his specialty. I am curious with King if he kind of develops really quickly, if maybe they choose to, and you're going to start seeing this when you start paying a lot of guys. There's some guys you just can't afford. If maybe Ivan Pace is one of those casualties where you just can't afford him in your budget anymore and you replace him with King. I think that it could be as soon as next year because of the restricted free agent contract that he would be able to get. It's just something to monitor, something to plug in your head. It does not mean that it's a guarantee. It does not mean that it's a sure thing. So,
and Ivan Pace is one of those guys that loves to run through a guard's face.
Well, I'd say he's one of those guys to dip underneath the arms, but he is very good.
But I've seen him run through a guard's face too. He doesn't mind initiating the contact.
No, I'm not the biggest Ivan Pace fan, but I also don't hate him. I would prefer my other linebacker to have been Jihad Campbell, but we're over that. I digress. Cornerback, I've got 6 guys: Byron Murphy Jr., Isaiah Rodgers, Mekhi Blackman, Jeff Okudah, Dwight McGlothern, and Zamiah Vaughn. It's really interesting to me that when they're looking at cornerbacks to draft or sign like bigger names, it's smaller guys that are getting the nod. Byron Murphy Jr. Byron Murphy Jr. is like 5'10 and a half, 5'11, but he's almost 200 pounds. Isaiah Rodgers is 5'10, 175. Mekhi Blackman is 5'11, 178. But then your UDFAs are Dwight McGlothern, who's over 6'2, and he's like 186 pounds, but he's got length, he's got quickness in a linear manner. Then Zamiah Vaughn is 6'2 and a half, 186 pounds as well. But he's great at the linear speed. So point A to point B, not moving laterally, just straight north and south. So it's interesting that the UDFAs, they're doing this high upside type, but the guys that they're spending higher assets on, they're taking the smaller guys. So I just find that interesting. But I do think that two guys could make the team out of this group that didn't. Tavier Thomas, special teams maven, but he's also a slot only kind of corner, but you'd keep him for special teams. I do think the Vikings wanting Murphy to be their slot kind of removes the need of, hey, we want to have a backup slot corner, especially because Mekhi Blackman can play slot. Isaiah Rodgers is not a slot guy, despite the fact that he has the size for a slot corner. He plays outside. He just happens to be shorter. But it's interesting that the priorities as a UDFA have been McGlothern and Vaughn. So something else to just put in the back of your mind. Just really interesting stuff. We got one more position
I
group.
also look at, there's a name in here that you have not making the team, and I agree. He's not going to make the team. Khalif Halisi.
Mm-hmm.
I look at the images taken by the Vikings photographers for doing graphics for 2L bloggers, and the photographer loves Khalif Halisi for some reason. He's got a lot of them.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't think about that. Safety, there's really not a whole lot to talk about. Harrison Smith, Josh Metellus, Theo Jackson, Jay Ward. The only other safety is Michelle Powell. This is a position group where I could see them adding a body going as we continue throughout camp, because they just don't have a lot of bodies. Mm-hmm. Rob mentions it, and it's something that I was going to mention after Thomas, but Ambry Thomas is somebody who can make the roster. Former 3rd round pick of the San Francisco 49ers. Had a really bad broken arm that ended up costing him most of last year. But he's an intriguing name for that room. He was never really great with the Niners, but he's got legit experience as a starting corner in the league. Specialists, Will Reichard, Ryan Wright, Andrew DePaula. If a good punter gets cut, Wright's job could be in jeopardy. So we'll see. We will see.
It'd be interesting to see the Australian punter in camp.
Based on people I've talked to and want to know, he doesn't really have a chance. So we'll see. Plus, Wright has been the holder, and I think that's an undiscussed point when it comes to special teams. Holder chemistry is really important. So you have to develop that chemistry along with being a good punter if you're going to overseat an incumbent.
And being a left-footed kicker like the Aussie is, that would be switching the opposite sides to be a holder. Because he'd want to hold from the left, being the left, I'm assuming left-handed.
Well, I mean, considering most kickers are right-handed or right-legged, he's used to holding on that side, so I don't really see that as a problem.
If he's held before. That's a question, too.
Oh, I'm sure he has. I would have to go watch kicker film from Auburn, but I'm sure he's held before. Now, sometimes they do have the backup quarterback holding in college, but my guess is he's held before. So I see where you're going with it. Makes sense. But for right now, I'm not super worried about it. But that is our show. All 53. And you know what? This is probably going to change throughout the course of the offseason. We're finally at training camp. Wednesday's our first practice. We get pressers starting tomorrow. Oh, I'm excited. It's going to be a good time. And there's going to be a lot more stuff. Just the programming note, I might not be going to practice every single day, but I will be going a bunch. And there could be some shows that have to maneuver because of that. Just please be aware of that and be ready for it. This is why we ask everybody to like, subscribe, and ring the bell. We will communicate those changes to you when they happen. And unfortunately, if it's a Monday or Thursday and I'm just driving back, I'm at the mercy of 494 traffic. So it could be an extra hour, but we will communicate that as soon as we know. So just be prepared. Until then, we'll be back on Thursday. What, Dave?
No, there's more Vikings First and SKOL content between now and Thursday.
You don't host Who Will Be King this week, though.
No, but I will be on. I'll be interviewed tomorrow on Kevin Smith's The Call Sheet on FFSN's Football Network.
Okay.
To talk about the state of the Minnesota Vikings. And then Wednesday, it'll be Pay from the Frustrated Chicago Sports Fans channel, who's hosting Who Will Be King, in which I'm going to give him a whole bunch of grief over what Pohl said or implied said. I think it's just another reason Poles is making mistake after mistake, but hey, that's me. And then Thursday, we'll have the Real Forno.
Should be exciting. It'll be a fun week. That is our show. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I'm Tyler. He's Dave. SKOL Vikings, everybody.
SKOL Vikings. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell to get notifications. It helps us grow this community that we all love our Minnesota Vikings. And on behalf of Tyler Forness and myself, Dave Stefano, thank you so dearly for watching The Real Forno Show. SKOL, everyone!